Welcome to Hello Port Hueneme. I'm your host Tom Dunn, and today we have a nice bonus. I think we're going to do a two-part video with Citizens Forum, which we do once a month with Rod Butler, the city manager. Welcome back and Happy New Year.
All right, you too.
And then we're also going to do Mayor's Corner, and we will start those twice a month right after the city council meetings with new mayor Will Berg. Welcome, Will.
Tom, thank you very much.
Nice to have you here. The first part that we're going to do is the Citizens Forum, and one thing for the citizens to know, I think it's very important, is what are the goals and aspirations of your city council and city manager. So we're going to start off with Mayor Berg, and he's going to discuss the topics that he wants to focus on in the upcoming year. Will?
Well, thank you very much, Tom, and appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with everybody what we have in mind for 2019. First of all, this is going to be a new budget year for us. You might recall that 2 years ago we passed our first ever two-year budget. Well, that expires now, coming up June 30th, and so it'll be time to have our new budget coming out. We will begin workshops on the new budget, probably beginning in mid to late March, perhaps April, but by early June, we should have things pretty much nailed down where we want to be on this.
This will be for 2019 and 2020?
2019 and 2020, so again, another two-year budget. So much easier on staff, on the finance department, on everybody, if we have that long-term picture of what we're looking at ahead. We also have this year, you might recall that the voters passed Measure U. Was it U?
Yes,
I
right.
believe Measure U with 69% of the vote, so it's very successful. And we're very pleased with those results. Now, it's going to take a while. We just signed some things in this last council meeting, 3 different resolutions that contracts us with the state and other companies to begin work on that tax. And what we mean by that is the tax will not be implemented until April, I believe.
Yeah, April 1st.
April 1st, April Fool's Day, right? Yes, I didn't think of that. Anyway, but even though they'll be collecting as of April 1st, it's collected by the state. So various businesses will be submitting these taxes to the state. Those numbers have to be followed up on, and there have to be studies on this done. But we probably won't see our first check April, May, perhaps June.
Yeah, it may even be early
July.
Okay. June, July sometime is when the city will see how much of an impact that tax will be able to have with this. Of course, we've got plans already on how we want to spend that money. And to help us do that, we'll be working to put together a Citizens Advisory Committee. We don't know what the name will be yet, but they're going to be working with city staff on where those particular tax dollars will be going. One thing, of course, we want to look at is our police department almost immediately. We need a traffic officer. I know all of us who tend to drive too quickly on Ventura Road, we are out there. We will be caught sooner or later. Our traffic officer will be focusing on that for the time being until traffic slows down. We recognized a city crossing guards. Our city crossing guards at our last council meeting, and some of the stories that they had to tell were rather nerve-wracking, and we still have a lot of work to do with slowing traffic down on Hueneme Road. We are continuing to investigate, study the sale of city properties. I think there's a feeling on some of the council that perhaps we should not, and maybe look for leasing opportunities, and of course that might be of interest. There's still interest in outright selling some of the properties, and seeing if we did sell, that means a one-time windfall of revenue that we would have to know, I think, in advance how we want to go ahead and invest those funds. So perhaps it would be nice to find out a formula whereby we could sell it and have a continuing source of revenue. Maybe we don't get all the money up front at first and spread it out over many years or something. That has to be looked at.
Like a lease, right?
Well, be paid like a lease, but I'm not sure we want to lease the it all depends on what the new owner would want to do with that property. What kind of investment would they need? We still want to continue to work on street improvements. Our current business plan for the city, I think, is coming to form smoothly now, and so I'm pleased with what I see. I want also new technology for the police department. I broached the subject for the very first time with our police chief, Andrew Salinas, regarding cameras for the police officers and how many would actually be needed and what would that cost be. And while the technology is there and the equipment is relatively inexpensive, I understand storing is where
Right.
the money is made in this. Very expensive to store this kind of stuff. We have to look at hiring more staff people inside the city and who will be in our administrative staff. And I think, Rod, you could probably talk to this more, would be there's a new formula for CalPERS, people that are hired these days versus somebody who may have been with the city now 10, 15 years. They're in a different formula packet, are they not?
That's right, yeah. So back in 2012, the governor and state legislature got together on a major pension reform plan, Public Employees Pension Reform Act. So if you hear people talking about PEPRA, that's what that means. Legislation that...
PEPRA.
Yeah.
Listen for PEPRA.
That's
okay.
right. And it basically set up a two-tier system so that employees who enter the pension system after January 1st, 2013 get a less generous benefit than those who were in the system before 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually set it up so that those of us who were in the system before 2013 are called classic employees, and the people who were hired after 2013 are PEPRA employees. And the significance of that to the city, and I think where the mayor is going, is employees who are hired, those more recent employees are less expensive from a employer standpoint because, again, the benefit is less generous and less costly over time. So right now, as we sit in January of 2019, about 1 out of every 3 City of Fort Hueneme employees is a PEPRA employee. So we're already seeing that generational shift where the old classic employees are retiring. A lot of these new people that we're hiring are PEPRA employees, and that will help the city over time in terms of the cost of our pension benefits.
Yeah, I'd say within 10 years, that'll be reversed. 2 out of 3 will be PEPRA.
That's right.
And so that's, it's a good thing. And then, of course, people enjoying good retirements is also a good thing. We hope they stay here in the community with us. But I'd like to turn it back over to you, Tom.
Okay.
Some other things we can bring up.
All right. At this point, I'd like to ask Rod, this is your start of the 3rd year.
Let's see, I had my 2-year anniversary on December 5th, so a little bit beyond that magic 2-year mark.
It's hard to imagine we've been doing this for 2 years, and it's been very effective. As we've said before, the number of people coming to City Council and complaining has dropped to almost nothing because of the way we address the issues that they bring to us, and we've been getting very quick action on it.
Right.
What do you see that you would like to be involved in or have the city move forward in 2019?
Yeah, so the mayor hit a couple of the items that are on my, I called it Butler's Top 10 for 2019. A couple things that the mayor did not include in his list. We really need to get moving on our water rate revamp. And what this is a process of looking at, for probably the first time in about 5 years, what is the level of water rates that we need to charge in the community through our city-owned water utility to make sure that we can run a safe, well-maintained system into the future. I know the mayor is aware of the fact, I think there have been, are we up to 13 or 14 water leaks now?
That is just in the last calendar year. We had 14 major breaks. Now, fortunately for the citizens, most of those breaks were on the city side of the meter, not on the citizen side. However, those are major breaks that had to be addressed. We are looking at approximately $30+ million in infrastructure improvements that are going to be needed and the sooner the better. The majority of them along the Channel Islands Boulevard, that area. However, there are still some on this side of town as well. The water rate study has been in the works for over a year now.
Yeah.
I would estimate a year and a half, and we got bogged down in that process, and we cannot allow that to happen and continue much longer. As a matter of fact, we need those water rate studies and the numbers that are going to come from that to help with our budgeting process.
Exactly.
So that's critical that we get on those right away.
Will, what's the main focus of the water rate plan?
The main focus of the plan is finding, traditionally, water rates were charged by two different formulas. Rod, you can help me with this. One is a set fee. And the set fee was typically, in Port Hueneme, I believe was around 60–70% was a set fee. So most people could go on vacation, go away. They would come back and still see that, hey, wait a minute, I've been gone. How come I owe water on my water bill? Well, you have your set fee. The other 30% was a variable fee based upon usage. Now, the question is, how about if we reverse that and make 70% on usage and 30% a set fee? Now, if somebody really conserves and carefully uses their water allocations, they'll see their water bill go down.
They get rewarded for being a
For being a conservator.
Yeah.
Now, but how do we, again, capture the revenue we need to capture to build that reserve fund to continue our infrastructure improvement? This is called a capital infrastructure plan or program, or called CIP. So in the future, you may hear council members talking about the CIP this and the CIP that. And CIP is merely a capital improvement plan. Buying the infrastructure, buying the stuff that we need to fix the pipes, lay new pipes, etc. Now, in doing this, who's going to pick up that extra slack if people are using less water? How do we capture the revenue we need? Well, that ends up on usage then. Who are the big users of water? It's our businesses. Unfortunately,
business.
We have no agriculture here in Hueneme. However, the port is one of the biggest users of water in our community, probably the biggest. And they have customers who use a lot of water too. Their challenge will be to separate out their water bill by usage. Who's using the water on the port? So they're going to have to invest in meters for various customers. And they're also aware that this is coming. But this will also impact laundry services, laundromats. It'll impact restaurants. It'll impact any business that needs more water than your standard house. They classify this in many ways. A typical house has, is it a 1/4 inch pipe?
Yeah, 1/4 inch meter. Yeah.
Yes, a 1/4 inch,
That's a
diameter.
small-
That's pretty
Yeah.
darn small. There are other businesses up to 10 inches.
Yeah.
10 inches. That's a lot of water. And the water pressure is beginning to die along Channel Islands Boulevard. We've seen this. We're measuring this process. So the work has to get started soon. I'm not going to say it'll get started this year, but by golly, we got to get the CIP done this year so that we have a roadmap for the future that will guarantee that this work will get done.
We're lucky we haven't had the type of breaks that I think both of you have read in Los
LA.
Angeles.
They've
The
got-
catastrophic breaks, we would be in big trouble.
Right. Yeah, that flooded streets and neighborhoods and everything.
Absolutely. So again, we need the CIP for the water rates. And we need fast so we can finish our budget process.
Rod, continue.
Yeah, so then we'll also be taking a fresh look at the strategic action plan or strategic plan for the city. Back in March of 2017, the city council at that time adopted, for the first time in several years, what we call the strategic action plan. Those of you that are council watchers know that former council member Tom Figg was very instrumental in putting that together. We then discussed it with the entire council, and the whole council bought into it. The intent is not to totally trash that old document. There's still a lot of stuff on that that is relevant and needs to be done. But with 3 brand new members of the city council now for the November 2018 election, we want to take a fresh look at that action plan and probably at some areas that weren't included in that previous plan. And that will then become the kind of the blueprint document for the city moving forward over the next 2 to 5 years, not just kind of a pie in the sky document, but with specific goals and objectives of here are the projects and priorities that we want to get done as a city organization. So that's going to be a planning effort that will involve several public workshops and meetings. So members of the public, business owners, other stakeholders can come down and have your say in what you think should be included in this new updated strategic plan. So that'll be a big item in 2019.
And this challenges all of us really on the city council, but it is particularly onerous on the 3 new council members. They are drinking water through a fire hose right now.
Yeah.
And they're getting a lot of information very quickly that they have to absorb. Now, in many cases, your first reaction would be to, whoa, let's slow this down. But we've been slowing it down over the last year. And Sylvia Munoz and I, well, we're pushing. No, let's pick up the speed now. We're ready to move faster. But we have to, of course, help our fellow council members catch up. They've got a lot of reading to do and a lot of questions to ask, and it's going to be a challenge for everybody.
Times change, things happen, industry changes, products change on twice a year.
And you
so-
can't stop because times change.
All right. Next.
Another one I put on my list is to start a citywide master planning process for all of our parks and our coastal parcels that the city owns. So that would include, for example, with our 4 main parks, what amenities would we like to add to those parks that aren't there now, that would make them even more enjoyable places to be and to use. And when I talk about parks, I'm including the Hueneme Beach Park, which is probably our, one of our most well-known and used assets. So almost like a little mini plan for each of those locations. What do we want to do over the next 3, 5, 10 years to enhance those assets that our city has?
And in the short run, our director of public works, Don Villafana, he's come up with some really interesting plans on little portable coffee shops
Oh, yeah.
Along the beach walk. They be push cart type of things. And so people who are doing their morning walks, hikes up and down to the lighthouse, etc., they're going to be able to buy a latte along the beach there and maybe sit and have a croissant and then continue their walk.
Walk it off.
Yes, they're going to walk it off then. But more activity along the beach would be a lot of fun to see.
All right. So yeah, we're at a point now where we can start thinking about making some of these investments and enhancements that we haven't really been able to do for the last 5, 6, 7 years because of financial realities. The mayor is quick to remind us, and he's right, that we're not out of the woods yet financially. We still, as we speak right now, we have a structural deficit in the general fund. But because of the success of the cannabis businesses that have opened here over the last year, and because, thank you voters, Measure U passed, like the mayor said, with a large majority, we really are kind of moving out of a poverty mentality as a city to the place where we can start thinking again about investing in parks, streets, building maintenance, some of these things that, everything as basic as roofs and heating and air conditioning systems, things that we've had to just kind of sit on for the last 5 or 6 years because the money was not there to do it and we could survive without making those investments. Now we're going to have some resources to start making those investments again. So
Actually, City Hall itself needs a lot of improvements up in the roof, the ventilation system.
Yep.
There's a lot of old infrastructure up top on the roof, needs to be replaced. And so we've got to very carefully judge where we invest the new revenues that are coming in. And they are beginning to come in. They reported out at the council meeting that the cannabis dispensaries that have opened up so far are hitting their targets.
Yep.
And things are happening as planned. Isn't that amazing?
yeah,
We'll discuss those numbers in the mayor's corner, where a new company came out and produced some numbers, and I think both of you have the overall numbers that we'll go into.
That's right. Yeah, let's see. I think we have covered, well, that actually is a nice transition into one item that was on my list, which is just continuing to nurture that growing cannabis industry within Port Hueneme. We currently, as we speak right now, we've got 4 dispensaries open for both medical and adult use or recreational. Within the next month to 2 months, there'll be 2 more of those dispensaries open. And you also start seeing over the next year or so non-dispensary cannabis-related businesses. So maybe some indoor cultivation, some manufacturing where the products are actually made at that site. And so there's going to be a continued expansion of that industry, and we want to do what we can to encourage that because, as the mayor said and Tom said, the revenue, the cash, the cannabis cash, as I call it, is actually starting to flow now and is a significant part of our general fund. And of course, that's one part of our economic development strategy, but it's not the only part. We want to continue to work on retail, restaurants, you know, things that other types of non-cannabis businesses that we can bring in to strengthen our economic base by making it even more diverse.
Yes, and keep in mind that also the state recently, for this new year, passed a law that all cities in California will be open and available for cannabis deliveries.
Yep.
So that's kind of a reverse tourism kind of thing here for Hueneme. People can come into Hueneme, they'll make purchases, or they can call, they can email, but once they establish membership in whatever dispensary they're in, and then it will be delivered from Hueneme, and we, Hueneme, get to capture the tax revenue on those deliveries, even though it may be going out of the county even.
We may end up with more businesses supplying other places than what
Right.
we actually sell
We
here.
already are. We're
Yeah.
already there with that, and you know, we have 200,000 neighbors that live right across the street.
Yeah. But, I mean, even throughout Southern California, cannabis that's manufactured here, that's delivered from here, the city will get the tax off of the sales
Yeah.
that may go into LA or San Diego
Exactly,
or out in the.
exactly,
right.
So
exactly.
that looks good. Okay, Rod, thank you very much.
Sure.
Anything else, Will?
No, it's
Okay.
just, it was an exciting council meeting that we had earlier in the week, and it's a very good start. I'm excited about this.
Okay. Rod, I want to cover a couple things from the citizens that has come in since
Okay.
it's been a while since we've had one of these meetings with the holidays and all that. There was mentioned, I can't remember who brought it up, but that the trash cans at the beach and the parks are the favorite hunting places of seagulls and birds and stuff, and they leave quite a mess, especially when
Right.
there's a big event has gone on. They get overturned and everything. I understand that there are the Public Works is looking into a new type of trash bin. Can you explain that a little bit?
That's right, yeah. So in Port Hueneme, we provide our own solid waste and recycling collection. The city does that rather than a private company. And so we have a level of control in some ways that some cities don't. And our internal staff have been looking at kind of a new type of trash container that we would put into the parks, public landscape areas, anywhere where the city owns the property or the public accesses, that would be more secure. There's a company now, and this is really the name, it's called the Big Belly Containers,
Big
Belly Trash Containers. And they are much more secure and larger and actually look better than what we have out at our parks and beach and public spaces now. It really helps with either whether it's homeless, whether it's animals, birds that can get into the containers and create a big mess of things. These are much more secure and more difficult for people to get into and cause problems with. So we expect, I would say by the early spring, March, April, that'll be coming to the city council for their review and discussion. And it's really not a money issue. Our solid waste fund is in very good shape, so the money's there to do it. It's just going to be an issue of does the city council feel comfortable with moving forward and doing that, and do we do it over a phased period, or do we buy them all at once? So there's some things that need to be hammered out, but we think it will resolve a lot of those problems and look better too.
I think, yeah, the look when people go out there in the mornings, it's a lot different than 6 hours later when the Public Works finally gets out there, and probably takes them longer than one day to hit all the parks and everything.
Sure.
So we'll look forward to that. Uh, because of the Cops for Tots, how successful that is, and it started almost at the time that we quit having the Santa Claus drive around, which was a big event. And there was some talk about, hey, could we revive that? And with some income coming in and stuff, do you see that as something that the citizens can look forward to, maybe an upcoming Christmas?
Yeah, I think there's hope for the return of the Santa Claus train. It used to take a lot of, it was basically a city effort back in the old days, and it took a lot of resources and staff from the city to pull that all together. So I think what you'll see in the future is possibly a private effort or a city/private effort to, you know, pull together enough volunteers to make that happen. And we wouldn't want to do anything that was going to be a detriment to Cops for Tots.
Oh, no,
So
I don't think it would
it'll
be.
it'll have to be, you know, coordinated with that event so that.
One thing, when I first moved here and saw it, and where I live, there are a number of elderly people, more elderly than me, who enjoyed it because it brought Christmas to them. They all can't, you know,
Right.
take their kids to do the Cops for Tots, or even do the tree lighting. It gives them a feeling of being part of a community. That's also something that once the Citizens Advisory Commission is put in, you have a committee for that, work on it all year long, and make sure that
Put them in charge.
put them in charge of looking for people, making sure all the licensing and insurance or whatever is. And if you get a private group to do it, that would work also. So good, glad to hear that. Yes.
Interestingly enough, at the Cops for Tots, a giveaway there, the line of children going around the corner, we estimated almost a quarter of a mile.
Something like, yeah.
It was pretty long. It went all the way to the library.
About 800 people were in the line at one time.
All at
because
one
that's
time.
about,
And that is a wonderful problem to have.
That's right.
Because years prior, it wasn't that many, but it's growing, and I think that's because of the marketing that the police department has done, and the people are recognizing this, and they're showing up. It's a good problem to have, and we'll work on that, you know, to
Right.
keep them warm while they're in line. But it was a very good evening.
Another item that was brought up at the end of last year was some people around Surfside 4 on Surfside Drive wanted another crosswalk put in, like from Surfside 4 to the restaurant, the Surfside Seafood, in that, again, with the elderly people that live in that area, there were two other crosswalks, but they were like 75 yards down in each direction. And this weekend, when I was there, they had a little car show, and not only the car show, but people, when there's 150 yards between the crossings, there are cars that are racing down Surfside Drive, and another warning and stuff could slow that traffic down, because with the elderly people there, they can't hear or see all the time of a car coming, and I think it could be both a very convenient thing and a safety thing, because there's kids running around there.
Sure.
You know, so is that a possibility to be looked into?
Yeah, still in the works. I've talked a couple times to Don Villafana, who we mentioned earlier, is the city engineer and public works director for the city. It comes down to the placement. Can you place the crosswalk in a location that makes sense in relation to those other crosswalks, and that is going to be a safe crossing place for the people who would be using it? And that's all. A lot of that is engineer ease that Don, you know, there are state standards he has to look at. So it's one that I would put it in the up in the air category now, but under analysis, under study, because it's going to determine if Don can do it in a way that complies with the state laws.
Since we started with the duck crossing, remember, down at
Yeah.
the pavilion and stuff,
Yeah.
it took a lot of work to get them secure going across there. I don't think
Yeah.
we've had one. I haven't heard of
Yeah.
one being killed.
I shed a tear when I think about Buster the goose.
Yeah.
I think Buster lost his life.
Oh,
and,
was he? Okay, he was a popular one.
Yeah.
I had an issue for somebody saying who takes their kids to school at the Bard School. Is that an elementary and junior high or just elementary? But just said that the drop-off area is so discombobulated, backed up. There's cars all over the place, and wondered if that could be looked at to see if there was a better way to handle that.
Yeah, so you reported that to us, and that's another Don Villafana item. Don can look at that. We've actually, the city at its own expense over the last couple of years has made a lot of safety improvements around schools. Everything from the red flags to repainting the pavement markings to a flashing stop sign up by one of the schools. So we have really made, I think, a more aggressive effort over the last couple of years than we used to. And he'll take a look at that Bard location too and see exactly what the resident is
Yeah, I've
talking about.
been there once or twice, not to drop anybody off, I just happened to be going down there at either in the morning or in the afternoon, and I saw it, I just had to make a detour, and I can imagine that a lot of people that use it get frustrated and whatever. So, yeah, looking into it is the first step. Really appreciate that. We had mentioned the train crossings on Hueneme Road seem to be occurring either when people are going to work or when they're coming home. And you said earlier you had been caught in a couple,
Right.
and we were going to have a community meeting with the port, who is responsible for that train business there. Have you heard anything when this might take place?
Yeah, so Donna Lacayo at the Port of Hueneme is the lead staff person on the train and rail issues. So I talk to her regularly about this. We actually had a date nailed down in late November, right after Thanksgiving. And the federal rail officials who Donna really wanted to be at the meeting could not confirm that they were available at that November 27th date. So we made a decision not to try to do it then, got through December to make sure we weren't conflicting with holidays. Now the hang up is, and I talk to Don at least once every 2 weeks about this, the shutdown, with the partial government shutdown, there is a lot of, not a total freeze, but restriction on travel for the federal rail officials. So they have told Donna that they, obviously we all hope this thing gets resolved soon, and that once that happens, we'll be able to get that scheduled. And what we're talking about is a neighborhood meeting that would be open to the public, where Port of Hueneme would be the lead agency, city staff would be there, and they would, and these federal rail officials would be available to answer questions on anything really having to do with the rail lines and scheduling and safety. And so still yet to come in 2019, but we've had some weird hang-ups that have kept that from actually getting scheduled.
Interestingly,
Yes.
one of the regulations that the Federal Rail Administration imposes on all rail lines is that they honk their horn, they blow their horn, I think it's 4 times
Yeah.
before they cross an intersection.
Oh, we get complaints about that too.
Even if there's nobody there, they have to
Yeah.
blow it 4 times. So I was just thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be okay if they could not hold up traffic by moving their trains at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning? Then I'm thinking, oh wait, 4 times when they come to an intersection, now you're gonna wake people up. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be
I-
an interesting problem.
I don't want to get
Yeah.
into it now, but there is something, I can't remember who brought it up, that there is a federal law, if you can prove that they don't have to make that sound because of whatever, I don't remember.
Yeah.
That can be restricted down some, so we'll look into that.
Certainly, if there's anything that the city can do to
Right.
create those conditions where they do not need to
Right.
blow their horn,
Yeah.
we're there.
Okay,
Yeah.
good enough. The last thing is, now this was brought up at the city council meeting, and again, one of the few times people came in, but it wasn't a problem as much as it was a concern of, I don't understand what's going on, and that's code enforcement. And I don't want to
Right.
go into the specific of what the person argued about, because it wasn't that important to the overall thing. But I heard, I can't remember if it was you or Will, somebody said you're going to have a code enforcement forum or something. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the particular items that came up at the Tuesday night meetings actually were more parking enforcement related, which is under the same department, community development. but separate employees from the code enforcement department. So we've been working with the 2 or 3 folks that were there Tuesday night to resolve their concerns. But on the bigger picture of code enforcement, there will be a workshop having to do with the revision of all the zoning codes, which include code enforcement policy of property maintenance, which is kind of really what impacts people most directly, is, you know, residential property maintenance standards and codes.
Yes.
Yeah, the council
That's
talked.
gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, no, that's true. The council's talked about it a couple of times. I know in the fall of 2016 there was a brief discussion of that. The council had a workshop in early 2018 looking at a lot of these code revisions, and nothing was really decided at that point. It was more of introducing some of the changes to come. But now in 2019, especially with 3 new council members, we really want to bring all of that stuff back for some action this time by the council, including, you know, what do we do about this issue of people that are trying to save water by having landscaping other than turf or grass in their yards? Well, that's good, but what is going to be acceptable in Port Hueneme as an alternative to grass or turf? And that's just one example of something that, you know, is a real life thing for people deciding what they're going to put in their yards for landscaping versus what does the city want to see.
Right, and we don't want them spending money on the wrong thing and then having to redo it.
Tom, I recall you and I sitting in the audience listening to some of those discussions, and they get heated real fast.
Yep.
Because people that have been, Hueneme's their home for years, and they've had their couch out in the front yard for all that time. Why do I have to move it now? Well, there's other enforcement issues, and we're gonna have to eventually address them. And then how to enforce them. And that's one of the problems too, is the delicate task of working with the community on enforcement of some of these things. And
Like trying to herd cats into a bag.
It will be a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks to both of you for participating in this, and we're going to do part 2 of this in a few minutes, and it'll follow this. So thank you from Hello Port Hueneme, and we'll start the City Council review in just a minute.